Hello. For this lesson, we are going to talk about function of behavior. So why do we need to understand the function of behavior, what the purpose of the behavior is? Well, there are three primary reasons. When we understand the function of behavior, we can identify changes in the environment or system that can alter behavior. We can identify skills and behaviors that need to be taught to replace behavior, and we can devise incentives and rewards to motivate and strengthen desired behaviors and skill. So let's take a look. That's examples how each of these outcomes can be applied to behavior change approaches. So in our first example, let's say we have a college professor and he has a problem. And the problem is students are trying to escape his class. They show up, take attendance, and about halfway towards the end of class, a majority of the students are leaving early, and by the end of class, he has less than 50% of his students remaining. So he sees that he has a problem, and he wants to identify, okay, what change in the environment or his system that can alter this behavior. And what he decides to do is take attendance at the beginning and end of the class. Now let's talk about a common occurrence, and that is a small child eager for adult attention will interrupt in adult conversations, and typically these behaviors entail repeatedly calling the adult's name, tugging on them, and so forth. So primarily what happens in these situations is the child is taught appropriate and polite methods to access adult attention, such as saying, "Pardon me, excuse me." In this example, we have a teacher who's concerned about poor homework submission. So what she does is she devises an incentive program that rewards students for submitting their homework in on time. And her system is based on a raffle system where one raffle ticket is provided to students when they submit their homework in on time, and bonus raffle tickets are provided to students when they submit in their homework early. These examples foreshadowed how we will apply function identification into the development of behavior strategies. And in the first example, we saw how antecedent intervention was used to prevent behavior. The second example, we saw how a child was taught an appropriate replacement behavior or desired behavior. And the third example, we saw how a consequence-based strategy was used in order to strengthen desired behavior. Now, the next lesson, we will take a closer look at how to devise antecedent behavior teaching and consequence interventions based on the function of challenging behavior. But first, we need to address what the primary functions of behavior are. So what are the four primary functions of behavior? The first function is behavior performed in order to attain attention from others. This could be attention from adults, peers, or a combination of both adults and peers. It also can be attention that is positive and negative in nature. So keep in mind that just because it doesn't seem like the attention the person is receiving from problem behavior is desirable to you, it may be to them. Some people like reprimands and redirections, especially when there's emotion attached to those reprimands and redirections. It may be their only attention they get. The second function of behavior is to access something tangible. This can be a specific activity, item, action, and in some occasions it could also be a desired outcome. Most times it usually refers to a certain activity or item that the person is exhibiting behavior in order to access. Now, so you may be wondering, what would an example of an outcome be? Well, let's say you have a child exhibiting problem behaviors in order to be like first in line, or maybe they were called out at a game and they want to be safe, something along that nature. So escape is the third function of behavior that we will discuss, and that is escape from something that is adversive. And this can be tasks, directives, a particular person, or attention. Most commonly, behaviors are performed to escape tasks and directives. On occasion, you will see behavior performed to escape another person. This is typically a result that the person who is evoking the escape behavior has been paired with a worsening condition, and that will need to be corrected somewhere along the lines in treatment. On another rare occasion, behavior may be performed in order to escape attention. This may be common, let's say, with a teenager who's receiving a lot of positive attention and praise in front of his peers, and that may be unwanted, which may evoke some problem behaviors. Sensory needs is the fourth primary function of problem behavior. You can break down sensory needs into two separate categories, and that is the first category really deals with positive automatic reinforcement, and that is to attain something that feels good. And the second category relates to negative automatic reinforcement, and that is to escape something that is painful and discomforting. Now, in order for the function of behavior to be sensory, the desired outcome of the behavior or the reinforcement cannot be contingent on someone else. In other words, the favorable outcome is produced without the involvement of another person. So let's take, for example, chewing on a pen cap. This would be a sensory behavior that produces something desirable, which will be automatically reinforcement. An example of automatic negative reinforcement would be stretching to relieve sore muscles. That outcome is not contingent on somebody else. Okay, let's look at some other examples, and this time what we will do is we will compare sensory functions with a tangible function. Now, in the first example, we have a small child asking a parent for a snack, and that behavior of asking would produce a tangible outcome, and that is attaining a tangible snack. In the next example, we have someone singing in the car, and let's just assume that person is by themselves, and so the act of singing produces something pleasurable for that person that is not contingent on someone else being there. So that would be in the category of sensory automatic positive reinforcement. The final example is someone who would be exposed to, let's say, hot air and would be fanning themselves. If assuming that that behavior relieves themselves of exposure to hot air, then that behavior is really not contingent on anybody else, and therefore it would fall in the category of sensory automatic negative reinforcement. Now, let's apply what we've gone through so far here in this lesson and the previous lessons and apply it to practice. Now, what we have here is we have 5 data points collected on one individual. So what I'm going to do is give you a moment to read over this chart, the ABC chart, and then determine what you think would be the function of behavior. Okay, so if you had a minute to quickly examine this chart, now ideally, I guess in real life situations, you would have more data points and you would be looking over the chart in greater detail. But based on what we have here, did anything jump out at you? Now looking at this for me, from my perspective here, looking at the antecedents, there wasn't a lot brought to the table other than that the behavior seems to occur in the presence of other students. So that seems to be information in itself. The behavior column is pretty standard, descript enough, and so we kind of get the gist of what behavior is occurring. In the consequence strategy, or the consequence section, or the consequence column, we take a look. Seems to be the verbal redirection and some sort of emotional response seem to be pretty consistent on these data points, whether it's laughing and some type of unspecified emotional reaction and verbal correction. So with that, I would be inclined to classify this as attention-based behavior. So in closing, I like to emphasize two key points. The first key point is that behavior communicates needs. So in other words, if you think of challenging behavior and challenging behavior could talk, what would that person be trying to communicate through their actions? Try to think of behavior in those terms. The final point I'd like to emphasize is this. In order to simplify your conceptualization of the function of behavior, is try to think of it like this. Behavior essentially allows us to get or get out of something. If by getting something, we are getting attention, a tangible item, sensory stimulation, or we are getting out of tasks, attention, unpleasant, or sensory stimulation on some manners. So if this is confusing to you, I suggest you try to simplify it to, down to those key points. What is behavior trying to communicate, and what is the behavior trying to do? Is it trying to help the person get something or get out of something?